Disclaimer: the views, information or opinions expressed in this podcast are solely the views of individuals involved and by no means represent absolute facts.
Okay, this then is Extreme PNE Podcast 5. Unbelievably, it's 10 months since I did the last one. There's a lot of things happened since then. So basically what Steve and I are going to do today is we're going to do a review of the last season's events, and we'll just begin by covering the tail end of last season and what happened there. And in that last podcast I did, I think it was last July, how appropriate it was that I was filmed walking towards Deepdale, and I introduced it as the Citadel of Nightmares. I thought that was very appropriate because, contrary to what we'd been told about the dawn of a new era with Heckingbottom, it didn't turn out to be that way. And it was quite, once again, it was another endurance test to watch Preston North End. So it did actually turn out to be, I would argue, the Citadel of Nightmares. So that was very appropriate that that was actually mentioned. Okay, so what we're going to do, just quickly, looking at what happened at the end of last season. So I'll make it clear here what was actually said by Craig Hemmings. Many of you will remember it being reported that he said the last 5 games under Lowe, where we didn't score 1 goal, we lost all 5 games. Not only just lost the games, we were completely played off the park.
Yeah, but I also think that the players threw Lowe under the bus because of his tactics, the way he was with the players. To lose the last 5 games without scoring a goal against a single point, that definitely points to me as if the players weren't happy. It was a shout out to the hierarchy, Ridsdale and Hemmings, that we don't like this guy. And Julie, after the first game of the start of this season against Sheffield United and yet another loss, Julie went.
Yeah. The point I was going to make there was that Craig Hemmings was quoted as stating that running last season was unacceptable, unquote. If that was the case for last season, what is his statement about this season's conclusion, where we went the last 15 games, we won 1 game in the last 15 matches, which any other club, I would argue, is a sackable offence. So that's what happened there. And then he wasn't sacked, as we all know, which led on to a couple of things happening. We were told by Ridsdale that he spent, I think it was 5 or 7 hours one day, trying to persuade Ryan Lowe to stay with the club. Can you believe that? It's now transpired, according to Ridsdale himself, that it was Craig Hemmings who was the saviour of Ryan Lowe and instructed Peter Ridsdale not to fire him. So if that's correct, I had great hopes for Craig Hemmings at one stage, but if that is correct, that he wanted to keep him on, then I've got serious worries about Craig Hemmings himself. 7 hours trying to persuade him to stay. What do you make of that?
Absolute tosh. I just think it was a spent force in my mind. A very, very spent force. It clearly lost direction with the fans as well. Many a fan was on his case.
Yeah.
And I think it was also the case with the players. I just don't think, the players were playing for him anymore.
And that situation whereby Lowe wasn't fired led on to us losing one of the greatest opportunities that was ever presented to us. It was last May, Will Still, who was managing in France, where he was winning all the acclaim for his management style and his achievements. He resigned from his position, his job as a manager in France, and he came over to England to be interviewed for the Sunderland job. And that felt that the negotiations collapsed, which meant that Will Still was available for, it was just a unique period, a 2-week window when Peter Ridsdale could have approached him and offered him a deal to become manager of Preston North End. I sent several emails virtually pleading with Ridsdale to interview him and get him into the club. But once again, as usual, I was told to leave it to the professionals. Well, we did, and look what happened. Just one game into the new season, and that set us up for the disaster show, as I would call it, that then unfolded. So that was a lost opportunity, because I would argue that Will Still is the best young manager in Europe. A lost opportunity. And I would have argued, just with the existing squad that we've got, he would have had us finishing certainly in the top 10. With a bit of backing, Will Still would have taken us to the top 6. And with good backing, he would have got this club automatically promoted. I rate him that highly. But as I say, just to let you all know, Ridsdale was laughing at me about that one and trying to ridicule me, the best young manager in Europe. We didn't approach him. So that sets the scene there. Moving on, we've just covered what happened at the tail end of last season, a couple of incidents. And just to try and compartmentalise this so we've got it covered in blocks, we'll just focus initially on Heckingbottom himself. I myself, after Lowe resigned, I think that the appointment of Heckingbottom was a panic appointment by Ridsdale. I was left with the impression that he basically may not have even interviewed anybody else properly. He may have spoken to them on the phone, but it sounds to me as though his automatic default was Heckingbottom, because there was no compensation involved. And then we were, as usual, when these new managers come in, we were being promised that there'd be a new style of play. We'd be moving away from 3-5-2. We'd become more flexible, more attack-minded. And then, lo and behold, what happened? He reverted to, he called it laughingly, 3-5-2, which, as we could have told everybody, soon morphed into 5-3-2, which meant that of the 10 outfield players, as happened under Lowe, we normally had 7 of those outfield players who were defence-minded, which resulted in the football being dull, boring and turgid to watch in the extreme, which has been the case for the last 5 seasons. That's what we've had to put up with for 5 seasons. Pass sideways, pass backwards, any which way but forwards. That's what we've had to endure. And what happens during the course of a game, because of this brand of football, or whatever you want to call it, we are lucky if we see Preston get 1 shot on target during a 90-minute display. And that's backed out by the facts. Apparently, out of the 23 teams in the Championship, PNE are the 21st worst for having shots, direct shots on target. So it's awful football to watch. Steve, anything to add to that?
Yeah. The proof is in the pudding on that one, because the first half versus Pompey down at Fratton Park was evident, because by half time we'd not had a single effort or shot off target or on target, let alone the corner, and it was like backs against the wall in that game. Absolutely one of our worst first half performances. Yeah.
And that type of display, that wasn't just a one-off, that was happening, it started to happen regularly. It happened at Millwall. I think it was a 3-1 defeat at Millwall as well, where it was a very similar performance there. And in fact, one of my friends who lives in Southampton went along to the Portsmouth game. He's been supporting the club for 50 years, and he told me it was the worst display he's ever seen from a Preston team. And it was so bad that at half time, he was asking the officials if they could open the gates so that he could escape from the ground. That's how woeful it was. And we've had quite a few displays like that. That being the case, the argument was, oh, well, under Heckingbottom, the style of play is much improved. I don't know if you agree with me, Steve, but I'd say it's not much improved. We saw the occasional glimpses that suggested we might be in line for some improvements, but it was never sustained. And as I say, it was just glimpses of something that might be about to happen that never actually manifest themselves. Would you agree with that?
Well, here's one bit of proof. Under law, he's finished worse off points-wise. All right, he didn't come in and have a pre-season. He's not signed any players that really is signings, and unfortunately, we had a terrible ending again this season. Looking over our shoulders at the likes of Hull, Luton, it's just shocking. It's been a shocker again. I just wish we had a manager that would play 4 at the back instead of 3 for a change.
Which raises the question, why are we so locked into this one-dimensional, fixed, absolutely on what's laughingly called 3-5-2, but it's 5-3-2. It's not 3-5-2, it's 5-3-2. Why are we so fixed on it when most teams have now actually moved away from it? What is the problem with actually going to 4-4-2 or 4-3-3? Obviously using a fast, attacking, tricky winger. And for those of you out there who say, oh, nobody uses wingers anymore, well, I'll refer you to the Euro Championship, Spain. Is it 2 years ago? 2 years ago this summer. Was it last summer?
Yeah.
Spain won that championship, the Euro Championship, by using 2 fast attacking, young, tricky wingers. They used 2 wingers. Remember that? One of them was called Williams, and I think he might be about to join Manchester City this summer. That's what happened there then. And as I say, we're locked into this 5-3-2. Why were we incapable of moving away from it? Which leads me on to the next point. One great signing we made was, everybody knows about this, was Kessler Hayden from Villa. I would argue, in my time of watching PNE since 1967, he by far is the best right back we've ever had. He was fast, pacey. If he was caught out, he had the pace to get back and recover and get a killer tackle in. And he was able to get down the wings as well. So it's a great shame that, for me, that with Heckingbottom having signed Bowler, who I got very excited about when I first heard about that signing, the reason being I thought this is going to be fantastic. When we join up Kessler Hayden with Bowler down the right side as an attacking unit, mainly an attacking unit, and defensive unit, that formation of those two with the skills and the pace that, well, not so much the pace that Bowler's got, but he's got this natural ability of just going past players. We needed those 2 players to be linked up, and for me it's unforgivable that, having brought them into the club, that Heckingbottom then didn't do the obvious, and not at one stage did he play one game where he used both Kessler Hayden and Bowler linking up down the right. For me, that was a criminal waste of talent. Would you agree with that or not?
Yes, I would agree with that. And also, which is criminal, is the signing of Hockles, which many people have put on such a lot of the forums on Facebook about the money that we used to purchase him. And I'm blaming Ridsdale for this one, because he was signed just pre-Heckingbottom, and he's obviously not been used hardly, and shipped out to Aberdeen, where he's hardly done anything there except be on the bench. And we're stuck with this guy, 1.7 million, which is a lot of money for a club like ours. And who's going to take responsibility? I don't see Peter Ridsdale saying much about it, and I think he has a lot to answer on this one. he hasn't said much at all as why and who recommended the signing of Ockles.
I've got a section there where we're going to focus on Ridsdale, so you've got a preemptive striking on me there, but we'll just cover that in a little bit more detail in a moment. Just to finish off on Heckingbottom himself, the other thing I can't forgive him for is not giving any opportunity to the club's youngsters. So I'm looking there at, for those that don't know, Stoll, 17-year-old goalkeeper. He is possibly going to turn out to be the nearest goalkeeper we produce ourselves to Pickford. His kicking is unbelievably accurate, and he's pretty darn good at making saves as well, pulling off very good saves. He's only 17, and so woeful was Cornell, 2-goal Cornell I call him.
2 goals a game. He lets in 2 goals a game, which means North End, if they're going to have to win the game, have to score 3. And can you see North End scoring 3 goals?
Absolutely not.
No.
But the point there would be that we knew with Cornell, before we kicked off, we were 2 goals down. And that's how it turned out, with the exception of one game. I think it was Stoke City where we drew 1-1. He kept it down to 1 goal. But it was normally 2 goals every game. That being the case, a lot of fans were saying, and you'd hear it on the radio commentary, oh, well, Cornell had no chance with that one. Well, when I've watched it back, the reason Cornell had no chance with that one, the goal that just went past him ever so predictably, was because his positioning was absolutely abject. He was nowhere near where he should have been, resulting in him being caught out many times, conceding goals. I watched some footage last night of Everson for Preston and Stoke City, pulling off unbelievable saves that he had no right to get to. That being the difference. Everson can save shots that he has no right to pull off, whereas with Cornell, it was normally going to end up in the back of the net, which is what he did. And so Cornell played a major starring role in that last 15 games where we won just 1 game, and that culminated in us avoiding relegation by just 1 point. Truly pathetic. Pathetic.
Let me tell you guys about Cornell. He came from Peterborough United, who were relegated, so he's got a lot of experience with relegation, and he almost did the same for ourselves. Like I said, and Andrew said, 2 goals a game he was averaging, and it's not good enough. He shouldn't even be near the team, but no doubt he'll be retained and kept for next season, but for me, should be gone.
Yeah. And the point was, I remember when he was signed from Peterborough, I checked that out at the time. He had, at the time, the worst set of statistics for any championship. He was in Peterborough won the championship then, for the worst goalkeeper in the championship, and yet we signed him. That one beggars belief. I don't think he'd be at any other championship club. At best, he's being, well, at best, I'd say he's a 2nd division goalkeeper, if that.
League 2.
But just to lead on to that, so Stoll was denied his opportunity, and those who were going to say, oh, you can't throw a 17-year-old in. Well, remember, we threw in Andy Lonergan. You and I saw him make his debut at Coventry City when we lost 4-1.
Yeah.
16 years old.
At Highfield Road, by the way.
Highfield Road in the league, the old League Cup, as we used to call it. And then Alan Kelly Jr. made his debut at 17. I can run off a list of all the players we produced over the years, who many of you fans, I don't know any other club where the home fans are so, they have it in for their own produced youngsters so much as Preston. I've never come across any other fans where they're so against them being given an opportunity.
Yeah, Kean Best is one of them.
And so the other players that should have been given a chance, in view of the fact that the senior pros, highly paid pros, were turning in turgid performance after turgid performance. Paziek, 19 years old, 6 foot tall, very strong Polish lad. I think he's born in Polish parents in England. Great player, can get down that wing, can get some fantastic crosses, never given a look in. Theo Mawene, who scored the wonder goal against Liverpool in the FA Youth Cup, That's only the part of it. He's been consistently doing that sort of stuff for the youth team. Never given a chance at all. Rodriguez Gentili. Some fans have been arguing, well, he scores a lot of goals for the youth team, but he hasn't scored one goal in the reserve team. Well, I suggest you look at the players around him in the reserve team, because how can I describe them? They are woeful. The big question is, how would Rodriguez Gentili perform with better standard players around him? It was coming up to 2 seasons ago now, pre-season, when Rodriguez Gentili was thrown in. You went to see the game again, I think, against Ipswich, and you told me he looked very good in that game.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. And the argument is, well, he's only 5'5".
He scored in that game as well.
He did score, yeah, I remember that. He's only 5'5". He's not bulked out. Well, I remember something similar being said about Alex Bruce when he was 18, all those years ago. He was 5'9", bit taller, but his frame, Alex Bruce, as he will tell everybody, didn't even weigh 10 stone. Yet, he was a natural born goal scorer. And I suspect that Rodriguez Gentili, given the opportunity, just might turn out to be the same type of player. But the point is, the question of can these players perform in the first team was never answered, because Heckingbottom, in his infinite wisdom, refused to play any of these youngsters. Wouldn't give them any opportunity at all. Key and Best I'll be going on about a little bit later on when we go into the retained list. But as for Heckingbottom, not giving any of the youngsters a chance, this happening when the senior pros paid 10, 15 grand a week, such as Ben Whiteman. Ben Whiteman, captain of this club, when he's probably a first division footballer, if that, and he is the highest paid footballer at the club.
Did you notice while he was injured and McCann was in with whoever else was in the centre of midfield, I think it was Ledson, and sometimes it was another player, how we were better without him?
We were infinitely better without him. The point being with Whiteman, he has no pace. When he tries to burst into a run, he's incredible. He defies the laws of gravity because he actually decelerates when he runs.
Do an example of his pointing when he's made a mock-up or something.
Yeah, the laughable point about this is that
it's like this.
He's just hit a woeful pass that's dropped somebody in the proverbial, and then you'll see him pointing out to somebody else to pass the ball forward, which is what he should be doing himself. We've seen him do it once in the last 12 months, possibly 2 seasons, which was at Bristol City on Saturday, when he hit a great defence-splitting pass for Osmajic to run onto. And if he was doing that on a more regular basis, then Steve and I and many other fans would not be criticising him, because there'd be nothing to criticise him for, because he'd be doing his job. As for being captain, it's an absolute joke. He is not captain material. And I think if he was asked himself, I think he'd admit that himself. So just to round off on Heckingbottom, and when it came to the cup games, the old League Cup, FA Cup, sure enough, we pulled out the big guns. Arsenal turned up first and ever so predictably beat us 3-0 without us laying a glove on them.
Correct.
And then Aston Villa through to the quarterfinals for the first time since 1966. Probably never happen again in my lifetime of watching Preston North End. And I disagree with the media and the fans who were saying, well, we put up a great battle. No, we didn't. We contained them for about 57 minutes, during which period we didn't get one shot on target, exactly the same as again in the Arsenal game. We didn't lay a glove on them, and then Villa decided perhaps we'd better step up from second gear to third gear, and then they completely dismantled us with ease. What happened when it came to the crunch against these teams? we weren't up for it. And a lot of you out there will say, well, we were playing top teams that are in Europe. But one of the most memorable games that Steve and I can remember was under David Moyes, when I think we were in the old third division then. We played Arsenal in the FA Cup.
Yeah.
And we went out, all out attack in the first half.
Kurt Nogan, we scored 2 goals. The noise was unbelievable. I nearly passed out when Nogan banged the second goal in. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. We were all over them. And full credit to Arsene Wenger, because the next day he was being interviewed and he said, we can't believe what happened. He said, in the first half, Preston played like Brazil. Do you remember that? He said, they took us to pieces. He said, but we knew they couldn't sustain that level of effort, and so we picked them off mainly in the second half. Plus a red card.
Plus, oh yes, there was
David
Ayres got sent off, so we were down to 10 men then. But the point is, it was a glorious failure. We lost 2-4. We went out with all guns blazing, and that defeat was one of the best footballing games I ever saw. We went for it under Moisey, and we had them. Actually, what was it? 2 goals up we were at one stage.
Yeah.
Yes, we were up by 2 goals, and we had them on the run. And I can still remember it vividly today. Compare that with these abysmal performances against Arsenal and Aston Villa. And then it was the same with Lowe against Tottenham. That was, I think that was a 3-0 defeat as well. Embarrassing and humiliating. We didn't even lay a glove on them. Not acceptable. So, just finishing off on Heckingbottom, that one win in the last 15 games, and then the penultimate game against Plymouth at home. Quoted in the Evening Post and local media, Preston fans turn up, do your bit, become the 12th man, turn Deepdale into a cauldron. We all turned up. Attendance, just over 19,000. First 15 minutes, Preston fans created a real atmosphere, and look at how we were repaid. The team then collectively, every last one of them, turned in a truly abject, pitiful, embarrassing, humiliating display to lose 2-1 at home to Plymouth, who had already been relegated. That was the decisive game. We could have determined our own fate of avoiding relegation in that game. And look at how we fans who turned up in our thousands and created a real atmosphere, look how we were repaid. What do you think to that game?
Yeah. Shambolic. It was there for all. They'd only won 1 game away all season. And lo and behold, we gifted them a win. Shambolic in all departments.
And then when we went to Bristol City, we go 2 goals up. And then we've got the Cornell effect that has to come into play.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, let 2 goals in.
There's 2 goals coming up pretty soon, and bang on cue, the 2 goals were conceded, and we just hung on, having been up two goals up in our hands again, and we almost threw it away, resulting in us avoiding relegation by just 1 single point. And it's telling how up to this moment in time, 1 week after, we've had no comments in the media or on the official club website from Craig Hemmings or from Peter Ridsdale addressing the turgid season we just endured. I use that word again, endured, because that's what it was, and avoiding relegation by 1 point.
Peter Ridsdale, how are you, pal? Thanks for not having a fans forum. But come on, you can throw them doors home, get one of those function suites down at Deepdale, and let's have a fans forum. Stop hiding at Exeter in your little office. We need to have a fans forum. Cue Andrew.
So obviously at this stage we're going to focus on Ridsdale with that, just to let you all know, further to Steve quite correctly saying we should be having an open fans forum, not just Ben Rhodes selecting a few of his chums to come along and ask nice questions. It should be an open forum with possibly about 300 fans in attendance in the great room. Just to let you all know, I've personally invited Ridsdale onto the Extreme PNE podcast on 2 occasions, and the man who boasts, "I'm open to all Preston fans all the time, they can come and see me whenever they want." The problem is, when they come to see me, they have nothing to say to me. They lose their tongue. Well, I think most of you know that I would not lose my tongue, and neither would Steve. We've thrown open the invitation and he doesn't even reply. In fact, I know that within the club, the powers that be, that'll possibly be Craig Hemmings himself, Peter Ridsdale, and Ben Rhodes, they see me, view me as some kind of lunatic fan who's, what's the word Peter Ridsdale used? Deluded. Well, now Steve and I are going to tell everybody who is deluded with what they've been doing with this club, because I would argue, and Steve agrees with me, and many fans do as well, Peter Ridsdale's performance over the past 12 years and the mistake after mistake that he's made renders his position as CEO as unsustainable. He should have been fired a couple of years ago. The companies that I've worked for, coming from a US multinational background in particular, he wouldn't have survived 5 minutes. He would have been fired based on the sheer magnitude of the mistakes he's made. For example, as Steve's alluded to already, Ockles, £1.7 million. I personally think that was a panic signing last summer. And the question I've got there is, with Ockles, I think it was just 6 months before we signed him from, I think it was Utrecht. Utrecht had paid £500,000 for him. And while Utrecht, apparently he only made 7 appearances, of which most of them were sub appearances. My question to Peter Ridsdale and the so-called scouting system at the club is, on what basis did you arrive at the valuation that Ockles was worth £1.7 million? Particularly when you take into account that you, Mr. Ridsdale, if you're watching this, actually threw away the player who got us all on the edge of our seats, Liam Miller, who we could have signed for £1.2 million. In fact, I remember it well, last summer, Miller was quoted in the local media as coming out and stating he would like to return to Preston on one condition: he would be used as an out-and-out attacking winger, because that's what he's all about. And then many of you will remember, you might remember this, Steve, there was good old Peter Ridsdale quoted in the Evening Post stating, I told Ockles that we'd welcome him back, but we don't play with attacking wingers, we use wing backs. And in such a manner, a player who was exciting to watch, who get us on the edge of our seats, scored that wonder goal against Leeds United on Boxing Day last season, thrown away. And he would have cost us £500,000 less.